Well, new on this very busy news morning, Minneapolis police say 12 people were shot in Uptown last night, and one of them has died. It happened outside on Hennepin Avenue near Lake Street. One man died. Police say the 11 other victims are expected to survive their wounds. The gunfire started around 12:30 this morning. Police say people on foot started shooting in the mid-2900 block of Hennepin and proceeded north. We did see a window shot out at a shoe store. Police called in 5 detectives to investigate this case. Good morning, everyone. I'm Esme Murphy. Right now, Minneapolis Police Chief Medaria Arradondo is holding a news conference about a shooting last night on Lake Street and Hennepin.
In our Minneapolis Uptown area. I first want to give my condolences to the one homicide victim who was deceased, obviously, to that individual's family and friends. I also want to give my thoughts and prayers for full recovery for the other victims who were wounded in yesterday's senseless gun violence. We have seen, unfortunately, over the past several months, an uptick in violent crime in Minneapolis, and we are certainly doing our best to address that. But I want to be very clear that while we will certainly be in those spaces and those locations and certainly utilize our intelligence and our data gathering to try to prevent that, this is going to take more than just the Minneapolis Police Department. The numbers that we are seeing are truly, it's a public health crisis. And so we're going to need all stakeholders to step up, be a part of the discussions for solutions, and help us as we navigate certainly through this. I also want to make note that during Uptown's shooting last night, that we saw humanity. We saw officers and we saw community members rushing to aid those victims, to assist them to get to EMS personnel. And I do believe, obviously, the professionalism and the courage that our Minneapolis police officers and community members, strangers to many of those victims, we saw humanity last night, and that really, truly inspires me. And it says that hope is here in our city, and it will remain here in our city, and we have to build on that. But make no doubt, the gun violence has to stop. And we will bear all resources we can to hold those responsible. I've been on the phone this morning with certainly my team leads, other of our local state agencies, and I've had also a very good in-depth conversation with our local FBI Special Agent in charge, and they will be bringing resources for us as well. The violence has to stop, and it is a call for everyone who cares about this city to make sure that we are all doing our best to come to the table to make sure that we offer up solutions and that we stop it. The Minneapolis Police Department, we are going to continue to be out there protecting our community members, but for those of you who are out there who are harming our communities, you have to be held accountable. We cannot have this. And so, thank you.
Take a couple of questions, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Last night, or 2 nights ago, Friday into Saturday, we saw a lot of videos on social media of drag racing happening in that same intersection. Is what happened last night connected? Is this the similar crowd? Kind of describe how that event unfolded into last night's event.
So the drag racing events that you had talked about over in Uptown the previous night, don't believe that had any sort of connection to last night's event. We are certainly seeing, with obviously certain venues of entertainment that have typically would be open this time of the year not being open. We're seeing some of that is being decompressed into other parts of our city where more crowds are gathering larger than they typically would be. But the drag racing event from Uptown the previous night to what occurred last night, we are not seeing any connection in that.
Does this city need a curfew at some point, either on Friday and Saturday nights or at other times to get people to not congregate in such large numbers?
You know, I know that our city leaders and certainly Mayor Fry is looking at all of those as possible tools, but the one thing I will say, curfew doesn't stop an individual from wanting to place a gun in their hands and cause harm to community. So we, and I certainly as chief, from the public safety standpoint, I have to make sure that we're doing all we can to prevent those types of things. But certainly that is a tool that our certainly the mayor will certainly consider. Yes.
Any word on arrests or identification of suspects?
I also want to say again, our community has been so good in bringing us information forward. So we absolutely do have several leads in that, and we're certainly our homicide investigative teams are taking up on those leads. And if I could just preface again, humanity showed itself last night. We had our police officers who were responding very courageously into the sound of shots fired. We had them working alongside community to give aid to those victims of gunshot wounds, to make sure that they got to the local hospital right away, which truly saved lives. And so really a credit to seeing that humanity of our Minneapolis coming together. And so, but we must prevent and stop this gun violence, truly.
Do we have any idea how many shooters there were? Any kind of motive? Was there any, that? And what do you say about the chatter on social media that officers were slow to respond and they didn't react?
So we certainly have a lot of leads, and we're following up. Investigations are certainly looking at all those leads. We're still getting more that are coming in this morning, so that is a good sign. No, we've heard about officers being slow to respond. I think it goes back to these areas have far more people now congregating than they typically would. Certainly last year, pre-COVID. So even vehicle traffic, getting our squads in can be a little bit more difficult to manage. But our officers, they're acting very courageously, professionally, and I can't commend them enough.
Chief, our first officer on the scene was under 3 minutes.
So just to note, our first officer last night at the Uptown shooting was on the scene within 3 minutes.
I spoke to some business owners who wanted to make it clear that this was not anything to do with spilling over of civil unrest from George Floyd, that this is a problem in Uptown. There's been an uptick in crime in the area. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, there's no reason at this point in terms of the information that I've received that what occurred last night in Uptown is some sort of reaction to Mr. Floyd's death. This truly, there was an individual there who showed up and decided to cause harm by firing off a weapon. And so I certainly do not want to disrespect Mr. Floyd's death and have that be any connection to that. So, yes.
Chief, is there any
Last
kind of
question.
Can you just elaborate on your message, because there's a lot of frustrated business owners in that area. Obviously,
Yes.
they've been dealing with the pandemic. There was the unrest, and now some incidents going on in that area. They're obviously frustrated, and they obviously are elaborating on a delayed response or whatever. And obviously, you comment on that. But can you just provide a message for those business owners? I guess what your reaction to their frustration would be.
Yeah, for our business owners in Uptown, and certainly our residents, all of us know that is a very mixed neighborhood of businesses and residents. I hear your frustrations, and I certainly can only imagine what you've been going through still dealing with the pandemic, and now with these incidents of violence. As chief, I can tell you, for our business owners and our residents in our city, we're going to do everything we can to prevent that. We're going to work with our partners, both our local, state, federal, sheriff's offices, to help bring in resources throughout our city. But we're also going to need everyone to come to the table. This is not going to be just solved through policing alone. And so, but we will be there with you. We will continue to make sure that your communities are safe, and you will certainly have whatever I can to offer to make sure that the community stays safe.
I'm going to break John's rule. Multiple shooters?
So we don't have all that information detailed yet, but our homicide teams are following up on all those leads that are coming in. I want to thank again our community for continuing to provide us that information.
Everybody, thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And that was Minneapolis Police Chief Medaria Arradondo discussing what was a violent night in the city. Specifically, there was a shooting last night in the Uptown area right around Lake and Hennepin, where 12 people were shot. One person has died. 11 others are injured. There have been no arrests, the police chief indicated. He did say that they have a number of leads. He says he does not believe that this shooting, which 12 victims, including one who died, is related in any way to the unrest surrounding George Floyd's death. He did say several times that, quote, gun violence has got to stop in Minneapolis. And he also said that humanity showed itself last night, that bystanders and police officers responding to the many injured in this shooting incident. We will have much more on this story on later editions of WCCO TV at 5:30 and 10, and throughout the day on CBS